Hello and welcome to the Back Garden Garage, where I have bought myself a BMW E30. Now I bought this as a project car because it was full of water, and of course that leads to plenty of rust holes. there was more than one or two, let me tell you. Now, what I intend to do is restore this car back to a fairly original condition, or as original as I can get it, and yeah, get it back on the road and enjoy it. So I've been doing small, manageable sections along the way, like this section here. BMW E30s, what any owner will know, this is the the most common area for it to rust. It's got to be. There's a lot of common areas, but this is one of them. And as you can see, I've repaired it, tried to make it look original, give it a coat of primer, and then moved on to the next section. And in the last video, I managed to complete this rear section here. Another common E30 area. Now I made new panels to go on the outside, lower sections, some inner arch panels. So it's all fresh metal in there. And my brother has kindly gone through the inside and give it a bit of clean up, a bit of red oxide primer on there, just to help protect it in the long run. As you can see, the outer panel is still not painted, the same as the inner arch, so most of that needs primer as well. However, I want to tackle the front of the arch first because there is a gaping hole in there, and when that is repaired I can hopefully paint the entire arch, including this rear section, all in one go. So that's what it's all about. So if you feel like that is a journey you want to follow along with, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. Give me a like if you enjoy what you see. Leave a comment if you've got any suggestions for me. I've had some fantastic comments and ideas over the course of this project. It's really helped along, so I really do appreciate them. Right, anyway, let's have a look in more detail and see what's exactly going on here with this front section of this rear arch. Okay, quick rundown of the first inspection. Obviously there is a hole in the outer arch, so I'm going to need to replace a section there. Don't know how much yet until I take off the seam sealer. The actual seal itself doesn't actually look too bad, although once I get it cleaned up we'll know just how bad that is. The inner flange of the arch. Now there is a little bit of pitting going on there, but I think that will clean up nicely, and I don't think I'm going to need to replace the majority of that. Same for the inner arch. The bit I was dreading most, especially after the fun and games of the rear section. Now the inner arch, there is some surface rust going on there, a little bit of red oxide where my brother got a bit carried away with it. But the important test, I'm just going to use a screwdriver. Now that is all solid metal, so I don't think I'm going to need to replace that either. I will get like a spot blaster, or maybe the sandblaster, the big sandblaster, if depending on how easy it cleans up, and just clean all of the rust off of there. And I don't think I'm going to need to replace the majority of, or if any, of this inner arch section. So that is fantastic news for me. Inside the hole here, I can see some rust on the panel work behind it. I will know more once I cut this outer section of arch out. However, I need to clean it up first. So I'm going to get some tools out, probably the multi-tool, clean up some of this seam sealer on the outside here, maybe a flappy disc or like a grinding wheel or whatever I need, and just clean it back. Maybe cut the outer section off, because that is obviously going to need replacing. And then we'll have another look what lies beneath. So in here, it's not as bad as I thought. There's a little bit of rust and a small hole in there, so it is going to need cutting out and replacing. But the actual section itself isn't too big. Now I did go for a new belt sander, a little finger sander here. This is a Milwaukee battery powered unit. My old one was starting to play up and cause me problems, and I was impressed with the Milwaukee die grinder, so I went for the belt sander as well. So far, I'm impressed with it. Now, as you can see, there is a little bit of rust here
on the back plate, but it's not penetrated in any way. It's only surface rust, so I'm just going to clean up the worst of it with the belt sander again, and then I can move on from there.
So I've got all the metal cut out. I've gone over with a hammer and dolly, straightened up the sort of lower sill where it's a little bit damaged. So I'm almost ready to go. But before I clean up, before I make new panels to go in there, I need to finish the last little bit of cleanup because there's a tiny little bit of rust in there, really small, only surface rust. And I'm going to use like a spot blaster for that. That's the one I got here. It's supposed to have a nozzle with a recirculating bag on it, but I'm not going to be able to get in there and seal it up. And to make things easier, I'm just going to deal with the mess. Unfortunately, it means that I'm not going to be able to film doing it because I'm going to put a sheet over me while using it, and that should contain the mess to the small area. So you're just going to have to deal with the after images of what it looks like after I've gone over it with this little blaster, cleaned up the inside. And I will join you after that. Okay, so let it be known, I did a horrendous job of containing that shot and that blast media. I'm going to be finding it for months, I reckon. It's just spread everywhere. Anyway, it's now done. I got that section cleaned up. I then give it a coat of red oxide just on the lower sections, and then a bit of weld through primer on top of that, just where I need to spot weld the new panel on. Speaking of the new panel, it's now actually time to start making some pieces to get back in there. Now I'm going to start with the inner panel. Now that looks like a very straightforward section to make, just a square with a bit of a bend in it. So I'm going to crack on with that one, get that made, and get it welded in. So one lesson that I have learned during this project is to never take anything for granted. And although you may sometimes think that it is going to be the simplest piece in the world, it will often come back and completely bite you in the backside. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've learned that lesson and then I've ended up needing to start again, scrap the metal that I've used, and just get my head in a complete twist where I just thought it was going to be nice and straightforward. And it's turned out to not only not be straightforward, but to haunt my nightmares. So yeah, that is definitely a lesson that I have learned. Never take anything for granted, and treat each piece like it's going to be the most difficult piece you've ever made in your life. However, this case, I'm done. I'm finished. It went all to plan. So let's get back to it. You done? Okay, right, so next section. Now this section is going to be the inner part of the arch, just the little lower section. Now I have left the original flange in place for reference, because trying to match it up to the other side, it will be hard work because there's not a lot left there. So now I need to try and make that piece and get it welded in. Just looking at that other side gives me chills. Oh, I'm not sure what I'm going to do there. I'm sure it's going to be a fun one. But anyway, that's a future project. We'll get on with the piece that I need to do now. I'm going to start off by making some templates. Now I've just marked up the ends of the piece that I need to make rather than it all in one go. And realising I'm marking it out with one of them upside down, so I quickly sort that out. Luckily I remembered before cutting it out of metal. With it marked out, I can then just take the tin snips and trim it down to the right size. Now I need to bend this piece of metal back on itself, but I can't quite do it because the vise is getting in the way.
So what I do is get a couple of scrap sections of box section and sort of clamp this in between the middle of the two, and then I can fold the piece into the box section so it can fold sort of that 180 degrees over on itself, and then I can finish up with the last little bend. Now a quick check to see how I'm looking, and it's close but not quite there. I put that last little bend in the wrong place, so I'm just going to straighten that out and rebend it and test fit it again, and it looks okay. When it's welded in and then all cleaned up, just with the welds ground down, I can give it a coat of red oxide. I'm just going for red oxide on the inside because that's all really that's needed. Now, this outer panel, obviously there's not a lot left there, so I can't really use it as a template very well. So I'm just going to use some paper or some card and just use the dirty finger technique and just mark out the areas which I need to cut it, transfer it over to some steel, and then I can get that cut out on the shear. Now I need to mark in the bend line, but I can't, the piece is too small basically, so I'm just going to mark onto the bench where the line goes, put a ruler between them, and then mark that onto the metal. Now first up, I am going to try and bend the soft radius of this outer sill in the sheet of metal. I just do that by doing it by hand. Then I'm going to go for the sharper bend to create the upright of the seal itself, just by bending that over and hitting it with a hammer. And then when I test fit it, I realised I put the bend, yeah, my measurements weren't quite right, so I am about 3mm too short. Now to rectify that, I could start again and make a new one, but I decide that I'm just going to mark out where the bend should actually be by marking it about 3mm higher, and then straightening the piece of metal out and then bending it again. Now this time round, I'm actually going to bend the sharper bend first, because I can easily get that nice crisp sharp line with the hammer without it sort of bent up in the way. And then when I force it back up straight, that will give me that sort of radius. And then, yeah, the easier way to go about it, I found. But what I did do, and realised it quite quickly when I checked it up, is I made this far too vertical. So it went straight back in the vise, and then lowered it back to more of the correct angle that the sill is in. Now it is a case of rinse and repeat of testing it, trimming it, testing it, bending it, and just keep going at it, just sharpening up the corners and making all the adjustments that you need little by little until you have got the shape that you want. Takes quite a lot of time. I do cut out the majority of me sort of tweaking and changing as I go, but with every sort of mark and every cut, it sort of gets better and better, and it comes to fitment. Now what I also do is when I get closer to the actual final fitment, I use a straight ruler to make sure that the lower angle and flatness is all aligned together. Otherwise it might look a little bit sort of wonky. So I'm doing my best to make sure that it is all matching up correctly. And there we have it. It's looking like its final shape. So all that's left is to drill some holes for some spot welds, and then I can get it coated in a bit of weld through primer. Now I'm only going to put some weld through on the sort of pinch weld, or the seam along the bottom, but I am going to clean up the metal, clean up all the pen marks, and make it all ready and good to go.
So while that primer is drying, I've got a quick question. Magnets. Now, almost essential when working with metal, but you get lots of metal shavings absolutely covering them. And they can be sometimes a bit of a pain to clean. I just use a rag to clean it off. Does anyone got any good ways to get those magnets fully clean of all of the metal shavings? I'd really like to know. So anyone got any suggestions? Leave a comment in the section below, and let's carry on getting this welded in.
So being an outer panel, I spend a good amount of time trying to make sure that these two sections are aligned perfectly, getting them nice and flush together. So that is probably the most important bit, this bit, so take your time with it. And then when it is all tacked in, I can just go around and finish welding it in, little bit at a time, and then just cooling it with compressed air, just to hope it doesn't distort very badly. Now it does distort a little bit on this process. I'm not sure how much worse it would have been if I didn't use the airline, but you've just got to do what you can, haven't you, really, end of the day, to just to minimize it. Now, as for the cleanup, I am just using the belt sander that I have recently purchased, because new tool, why not? It also helps keep the heat down a little bit, just by sort of doing a little bit at a time. Find with the flappy disc, that can also sort of introduce a lot of heat into the panel, and the heat is what will cause it to sort of warp and bend on you. So yeah, just trying to keep it to the minimum and getting it all cleaned up. Now, as I said, this it did distort a little bit. Now, along the bottom edge, it's cleaned up well and is basically flush. You can't tell where it's joined. But on the upright section, it has sunk just that little bit. So I am going to need to address that, I think, because filler will fix it, but a little bit less filler will be better. I also need to fix the back edge where it's raised up a little bit, but that should be hopefully nice and simple just by putting a slice through and then bending it back and welding it in place. So I'm going to start by trying to straighten out that sunken section, and it makes it nice and easy. I'm super glad I built this rotisserie to work on this car, because yeah, it just makes everything just that little bit easier for me. Now, first step, I am going to try a crowbar, and I'm going to use this crowbar on the inner panel, just with a bit of rag taped to the top of it to try and soften the edges, and then push out on the panel, trying to push that bend out. Now, it worked okay, but not brilliantly, so I changed tactic, and this time I'm going to get a bit of wood and sort of round off and soften the end of it. And that will hopefully sort of contour almost to the shape of the outer sill. Then I will put the wood in there and hit it. And I will do a little bit at a time and checking it as I go. And it's actually improved it quite significantly. So I am happy with that. It's not perfect, but it's way better than what it was. So I move on now just to fix in that back little section that I mentioned, just by slicing it down and welding it back together. And then I can just use a hammer and dolly just to round over the very bottom of the sill edge, just to match in like it was before. And lastly, nice little bit just to fill in the flange that's missing at the bottom, just a small little section cut out and then just gets welded on before I can clean it all up.
So that panel is now done, it's cleaned up, and I'm really happy with how it looks. I'm quite proud of myself with that one. Now that also means that all of the rust is cut out and removed from this rear arch of the car. But it does leave the rust, which is like surface rust. I don't need to cut it out, but I do need to treat it. Now, what I'm going to use is a Built Hamber Deox gel. I've used this in the past. I have a video on it. I'll leave a link if I remember at the top. I was really impressed with it. However, it's not a quick process. So to save going through it all again, what I'm going to do is get all of this arch treated. While it's being treated, I'm going to clean up the rest of the arch and prep it ready for primer. When I'm in that stage, I'll come back to you and we'll follow the progress.
So instead of leaving you completely in the dark, I'll give a brief overview of what I did. First up, trying to clean up that shot that went everywhere, just so we can make a new mess. And it is just cleaning up all of the residue of undersill that is still left in this arch. First with a sort of paint and rust remover pad, and then a drill and a wire wheel. Now this is extremely monotonous. So you just have to put the radio on, have a little dance, have a little sing to yourself, and just do everything that you can do just to pass the time. And then eventually you get a reasonably looking arch. However, I'm not just going to do this arch, I'm also going to do the little section of boot floor here. Now I can't do all of it because there is a exhaust hanger that is in the way and I can't get in there properly. So what I decided to do is actually cut it off and remove it. I took a few pictures just to see where the location was, although the location is not going to be vital on just an exhaust hanger. So I wasn't afraid to cut it off, and yeah, just with a cutting wheel and some sanding, I managed to get it removed. Now, in behind there, it wasn't actually too bad. There was a little bit of scabby rust, but nothing too drastic. Like I said, the main reason why I wanted to take this off was to be able to get in there to give it a good clean up and remove the remainder of all of that seam sealer and undersill. When I do get that removed, then I attack the rust and mechanically remove it with a sort of sanding pad on this, and just take that down in all of the areas that it's needed to be, including on the inner arch, which you can't really see very well because I can't get the camera in there. But yeah, using the file here, the power sander, just removing all of that surface rust and grot, and it actually looks too bad. You can see why I decided not to cut it out and replace it. I just need to treat it, and that leaves all of the arch now free of rust, free of the undersill, and ready to move on to treatment. Like I say, this Built Hamber, not going to go too much detail, but essentially I give it all a good clean up, and then I generously layer on this gel onto all of the rusty areas and give it a coat of cling film. Now that is going to take a couple of days really to do its thing, and I need to agitate it as well. So in the meantime, I'm going to move on to cleaning up that exhaust hanger. Now this exhaust hanger has still got, again, load of this seam sealer undersill on it. So I need to remove the majority of that, just to make it easier for when I use the little blasting cabinet. Because in this blasting cabinet, it will remove rust and paint without any issues. But when the bits of undersill get in the way, it acts like a rubber barrier and it just bounces the shot back off, which is the reason why you want to try and clean up that rubberized texture as best as you can. And yeah, I just get this piece all blasted down. Not much to say over this bit. I'm just going to let it run its course, just a bit of time lapse of a bit of blasting. just in case you want to see it. So that is all done, all of the rust fully removed. I did give it a coat of primer just to protect it. I didn't film that, I forgot to, and we are done. We are just now waiting for this built hammer to do its thing. Say 24 hours, and then agitate it, then another 24 hours, and then we can look at moving on.
So I'm back, and that rust converter gel has done its thing, and it's taken the rust off. It's left the exposed, slightly pitted metal underneath it, but yeah, it's plenty good enough to go. However, I couldn't get round to getting this painted in a couple of days, so what I've had to do is give it a coat of weld-through primer on that sort of raw, exposed metal, just to stop it flash rusting. And in the meantime, I've been doing a few things around the garage. Now, one thing I've done is put some LED lights into the ceiling, because brighter is better, especially with the winter sort of rolling in and the dark nights coming. And speaking of the dark nights, it's also going to get cold, so I have put a diesel heater in the corner. Now that should bring the temperature up just a little bit, and it is exhausted out through the wall as well. So all of the harmful mess is all going outside rather than sitting inside the garage. What else have I done? Made some 3D printed brackets for the tools so they can sit up on the wall out the way, nice and accessible, but not cluttering up the drawers. And yeah, just little bits like that while I was waiting for the weekend before I can get some primer on the car. Now, as for the car itself, I have done a few things in here. I have welded the exhaust hanger back onto the chassis, because it's better to do that before I paint it. I've also gone over the car, or this area, with a Scotch-Brite pad and sort of scuffed the whole lot up, removing the majority of that weld-through primer, because ideally I want the epoxy to go onto the metal rather than onto the weld-through stuff, because give better adhesion in there. There's still a little bit of residue, but I don't think it's going to hurt any. So that's all been done. So it's all prepped and ready to paint. I do want to give a brief shout out to this jacking point area of the car, because looking at the other side, I know how bad they can get. However, once I cleaned it back, I could see it was a little bit pitted on the outside. I can see the inside. There's no rust there, so I'm thankful to it for just being a treatment and then a paint over. But I just want to give a little mention, just because of how common these areas are on these BMWs. As for the painting itself, I will leave a link to a video at the top that goes more in depth to the sort of process that I am taking. I'm still a beginner at it, so take it with a pinch of salt. That video was the first time I ever used a spray gun, so there's been a bit of a learning process with it. As for a brief overview, I am using a Bergen spray gun. I don't know too much about it. I inherited it from a family friend a few years ago, and I've just been putting it to use, doing a bit of practice. The pot is just about big enough to do the area that I want to do, so that is going to be fine for my needs. As for the primer, I'm using a Novel epoxy primer. Now that has got a rust inhibitor built into it, so that should help keep the rust at bay. I'm not going to go for a full thick coverage, just a good nice coating over it. And when we got all the sections done, I will go back over the entire underside of the car with a nice thick coating of the epoxy when that's all done. So that is a basic overview. So while I give this a final clean down, I will just mention that the diesel heater has been working all morning, just to get some temperature in the garage. We also installed some butcher doors on the front as well, and that really does help just retain the heat in here, because you do want to paint in a warmer environment if you can, which is going to get less and less often, obviously, as the winter rolls in. So yeah, I'm almost ready to go. I'll set up a time lapse. I will get this arch nicely painted. I'll have to leave it to set off because it's going to be nasty fumes in here. I will have the extractor fan running, of course, in the top. But yeah, I'll join you when it's all dried off and we can see what it actually looks like. Now, of course, it didn't go smoothly. It's never going to, was it? It started off with the stripping down the spray gun because for whatever reason, as soon as I connected the airline, it was just blowing air straight out the nozzle. So I spent a bit of time, stripped it down, having a look inside. Don't really know what I'm looking at. Couldn't really fix it. Apart from, so the trigger, you need to push it back out. Once you press it and let go, it will get a bit of air, and if you just pull the trigger back, it will then stop the air. So it was a bit fun spraying, but it needs must, I guess. So as for the final result, now inside the arch, it looks good. It's all nice and uniform, which always makes it look even better. The outer panel, the outer sill at the front, now that is, you couldn't see where I've done it, but with a very light coat of filler, I think that will disappear nicely. On the plus side, the lower sections of these cars have got a stone chip along the lower section of the sills and rear sections, so any little bit of imperfections I think will just gonna disappear once that's coated on there, so that's gonna work in my favour. So the boot floor, the inside of the chassis leg and just all of that area, it's all looking good, and I'm really happy to be done with this section. Well, I say done, obviously it needs final prep, filler, things like that, but that is later down the line. I'm just looking at removing all of the rust. So that is a job done. Speaking of the filler stuff though, the lower section of arch, or the rear section of arch where the bumper is, I'm still undecided. Now I've got it in one colour, it doesn't look too bad. A little bit of filler work will probably tidy it up nicely, although it's running through my head, shall I just see if I can make a new piece of metal for there? We'll find out, I guess, in time to come. And that is it. Section is done. It's always a good feeling to do those little sections. When it's completed, it's a nice win under my belt. So yeah, I'm over the moon with it, and I can move on to the next sections. I think the next section is going to be the boot floor and maybe the front arch, because I cut a section out, haven't filled it in yet. Some easy bits. Do I jinx myself by saying that? But that's what I think I'm going to do next. Just a little side note, I know in the last video I had a few audio issues, which hopefully I've sorted out. And also in this video, I know the lighting and the camera picture quality has been a bit flashy, not great. So I have got a new camera now, and I'm hoping that will be all the technical bits, the bits I'm no good at. Well, you could argue I'm no good at the welding, but I'll leave that to the comments if that's what you think. But yeah, so the video quality hopefully will be better moving forward. But yeah, I think that is going to be the end of this video. So if you like what you've seen, give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.